So the New York Times is very, very much into everything ought to be unionized. Unions must be stronger. We need unions to get better deals and all the rest. Well, apparently the New York Times staff is now planning a massive walkout over their union contract. According to the Huffington Post, unionized staffers at the New York Times are preparing to go on strike today, as negotiations with the newspaper's management have failed to result in a new contract around 20 months after the last contract expired. More than 1,100 members of the New York Times Guild voted Friday to authorize a strike if both sides did not reach an agreement by December 8th. Wednesday evening, management, quote, walked away from the table a little before 7 p.m. Eastern and refused to return with 5 hours to go, said the Guild. The members have acknowledged a slight tone shift at the bargaining table and increased urgency from company representatives. Times management would not agree on core issues. The potential walkout would last 24 hours beginning at midnight, decimating the newspaper's workforce as the company faces continued pressure to publish a daily paper and maintain its website. Members of the Guild are encouraging Times readers to steer clear of the site, everything from the homepage to its recipe section to its games, including the crossword and Wordle, for the duration of the walkout. So I'm now encouraging my listeners for the first time to go visit the New York Times website, mainly because News Guild unions are bad for pretty much everybody, including many members of the union, who will end up in places of non-seniorage and will not actually have the benefit of being at the top levels of the union. The unionized staffers are expected to picket outside the New York Times building. The rally will feature speakers like journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones. By the way, when's the last time Nicole Hannah-Jones wrote anything for the New York Times? Using the term journalist to apply to a lady who writes one piece every 2 years and then has the newspaper place millions of dollars behind ahistorical nonsense, that's a pretty sweet gig. I'm not sure what Nicole Hannah-Jones is striking over. I mean, that lady has the sweetest gig in American public life. It's pretty incredible. New York Times spokeswoman Danielle Rhodes-Ha told the Huffington Post by email, while the company is disappointed in the looming strike, we're preparing to ensure the Times continues to serve our readers without disruption. Apparently, some desks will lose up to 90% of their manpower in the event of a walkout. The New York Times richly deserves it, obviously. New York Times feature writer Sean McCreish told WNYC's Brian Litter on Tuesday that what has the newsroom up in arms is that they are fed up with incremental gains in pay while the New York Times company has flourished. Well, I mean, I assume that is because the New York Times company includes all of the people who own it and have taken the capital risk of running the company. McCreish said, when the pandemic hit, everybody was similarly freaked out and sitting at home on their phones all day long. Subscriptions continued to boom. Now we're coming out of that era, and subscriptions are falling flat at other news organizations. But the Times used the momentum from that era to transform the business into something beyond a newspaper. They made other acquisitions. They diversified the revenue stream. It's the greatest success story in the legacy media these days. That's why employees are really sort of steamed right now. Now, normally you would say, well, aren't you just happy you're not getting fired? CNN is laying off hundreds of employees. There are a bunch of Buzzfeed is laying off hundreds of employees. The New York Times is not laying you off, and you're whining because they're successful. And this is one of the big problems with the way that many labor unions view the businesses with which they work, is that if the business is successful, then this means the unions aren't getting enough. Alrighty, well, the New York Times, as I say, richly deserves it. Speaking of the journalismists and their incredibly nonpartisan objective journalisming, there is a picture that has now emerged via Farnoosh Amiri, a congressional reporter at the Associated Press. And it is worthy of a bit of examination. This is a photo of Nancy Pelosi with the women of the Capitol Press Corps. And this is what she tweeted out. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and most of the women of the Capitol Press Corps. There are a few things to note here. One, that's a lot of white people right there. That is a lot of white people. And every woman in this picture would be tweeting about how non-diverse this crowd was if it were literally any other industry. In fact, many of them were. I guarantee you that all you would have to do is examine the Twitter feeds of many of these journalists and you would find some sort of critique of Elon Musk's all-male, largely white, upper crust team over at Twitter. All the greatest advocates of diversity are perfectly fine hanging in non-diverse circles. This is a pretty, they're saying that the revolution in China right now is the so-called white paper revolution. This is the white journalist revolution right over here. Just what incredibly diverse, not one black person in that photo, not one. So really well done, journalismists. Second point to make here. Look at all these wonderful journalismists who are just sitting there with a person they're supposed to be covering. Isn't that delightful? You think they're going to do that with Mitch McConnell? You think they're going to do that with, I don't know, any other Republican, literally any other, like Joni Ernst, like any other historic female Republican? You think they would do this with Condi Rice? I have serious doubts as to whether that is the case. And yet here they all are grinning broadly because after all, this is the person they cover and they love her and she loves them. And why wouldn't she love them? They're her lap dogs. In fact, one is even carrying a lap dog in a small purse. Like this is a picture of the people who cover the industry. So if all these people decide to go on strike tomorrow, I'm with them. More power to the people. Well, let all of these journalists go on strike and stay on strike literally forever. And I think that the country may, in fact, be better off. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We will be getting into Cory Booker, who's very upset that Republicans might look into Hunter Biden. Plus, Democrats still complaining about voter suppression in Georgia, despite the fact they just won a Senate seat there. If you're not a member, click the link in the description and join us.